Welcome to the MMAnews.com podcast, powered by Pony King Sports, with your hosts, Josh Stevens and Tim Thompson. Woo!
Hey there, everybody. We are back again with another episode, and as always, I am here with Tim. Tim, how's it going?
It's going good, my man. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Getting ready for some UFC coming up. We're gonna recap a little bit, and we got some stuff going on this weekend.
We have a lot to recap. A busy weekend last weekend, and yes, this weekend major events. We really only have the UFC event in Brazil, but we have a lot to talk about there. And you and I actually are going out to the beautiful state of Indiana to cover Hoosier Fight Club, HFC, which is owned under the Alliance MMA umbrella. So they've had a lot of success there so far. You know, the Neil Magny's, Felice Herrig, a bunch of people have come from under that HFC banner. So very excited for us to go and cover that event tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure, man. And we are going to be talking some LFA coming up, Bellator 193. We got some UFC on Fox 27. And like you said, the UFC Fight Night 125 in Brazil, headlined by Lyoto Machida and Eryk Anders. But before all that, Tim, tell everybody who we have for the interview this week.
Excuse me there, Josh. My apologies. This week we get to talk to UFC's own Leon Edwards. He's fighting Peter Sabata at UFC Fight Night 127 at the O2 Arena in London, England. So very excited to talk to Leon. Great guy, and should be a fun interview.
Awesome, man. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's start off with LFA 32. That happened this past weekend. What were your thoughts on the card? It was headlined by Allen versus Hernandez.
Yeah, it was the main event, if you would, of this card. The last, 5 or 6 fights, a lot of top talent. You saw Juan Adams versus Dwight Gibson. Juan Adams did exactly what he does best. You saw that he tried to stand up and strike a little bit more than usual. Once he gets in close with these guys, it's end of story. It's the end of the fight. He's able to just take them down and control them. A massive heavyweight. He's now 3-0. I would not be surprised that by this time next year we're talking about him being one of the top heavyweights in the world. In all honesty, Zach Fears beat Lanny Dardar. I actually interviewed him this week. Hopefully we'll be having that coming out here pretty soon. Carlo Prater has a monster arm triangle victory in this, and then Ryan Spann against former UFC fighter Alex Nicholson finishes him. That was a great fight, back and forth. Nicholson was looking great. It looked like Spann was going to be finished. He comes back with a monster return. And then the main event, Anthony Hernandez versus Brendan Allen. I feel bad for Brendan Allen, man. A great guy. Last time he fought for the LFA title was against Eryk Anders, who's the headliner in tomorrow night's UFC card. Comes back after that, gets a win over Chris Harris, gets another shot at the title, and runs into another buzzsaw, undefeated top prospect in Anthony Hernandez. And Hernandez just controlled the fight. Plain and simple, outworked him, dominated pretty much every aspect of the fight.
We saw what happened with Eryk Anders when he fought Brandon Allen, and he did win. We see where he's at now. Just like you said, he's headlining the fight in Brazil coming up against one Lyoto Machida. Anthony Hernandez defeats Brandon Allen. What happens to both of these fighters here?
Allen still has a bright future. He's going to have to kind of reassess and just come back again. Anthony Hernandez, this is a great win for him. He looked fantastic. With that said, I don't think that we're going to see the immediate kind of turnaround that we did with one Eryk Anders. Anders' size, Anders' pedigree, his background with Alabama football, and his finishes beyond that, his pretty impressive finishes had a lot to do with that. I believe the Brendan Allen fight was the first time that he had not finished his opponent in his career. So, and on top of that, I mean, Eryk Anders was 7-0. Hernandez is only 5-0. He could use a couple more fights in against similar competition.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is there a fighter on this card, Tim? You talked about Zach Fears. You talked about Prater, Span, and now Hernandez, and you kind of mentioned Juan. Is there one guy on that list of fighters that did come out victorious that you see? Maybe other than Adams, because you did say that he would be the next top possible heavyweight this time next year. Is there another fighter on that list that you could see kind of jumping in those ranks?
Yeah, I already mentioned Adams. I would say not necessarily rankings, but perhaps a year from now you talk about him getting that shot in the UFC. Anthony Hernandez, I mean 6-0, he's the title holder. If he can go and get a finish in his next fight, he very well could be getting the call up. And Ryan Spann, I like Ryan Spann. It's interesting watching his fights. He hasn't lost since he fought, Carl Robertson at Dana White's Contender Series. Carl had that vicious finish, and before that, I mean, look at these guys that he's lost to. Trevin Giles, it's a UFC fighter. Robert Drysdale. And as you know, Robert Drysdale is one of the top jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world.
Yep.
So he's fighting top competition. So. And this fight against Nicholson was in the UFC not too long ago. So he's right there. I wouldn't be surprised if a last-minute replacement, something along those lines came to a head for one Ryan Spann.
All right, fair enough, man, fair enough. Let's go ahead and move on to Bellator 193. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely.
Good. You did not have a choice either way, so we're moving on. Bellator 193, headlined by one Lorenz Larkin versus Fernando Gonzalez. Gonzalez came in heavy, right? If I'm correct?
He did, yep.
What was it, 4 pounds or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was like 3.5, something like that, yes.
Idiots. But regardless, let's go ahead and move on to some of the guys that did fight. We talked about last week, Fortune ended up winning.
Yeah, they had Tyrell and Tyree, the brothers, Fortunes, fighting on the prelim, which drive me nuts. I mean, this whole prelim and post-lim thing, for that matter, just drives me nuts. You got these two, and I know when I'm on my rant last week, so I'm not gonna kill it again. But yes, both those guys, both of the Fortune brothers, undefeated, go out there, get the unanimous decision victories, and beyond that, in their post-lims, I mean, I get that you might have 1 or 2 fights that you just weren't able to get to because of, whatever, the TV purposes. Josh, they had 6 post-lims.
I saw that.
I mean, it's just outrageous. And one of those guys was Justin Lawrence.
Yep.
Justin Lawrence was a UFC fighter not too long ago. He's 11-4. So it bothers me to no end that they have this. They got some top prospects, some big-time prospects on those post-lims that are just going by the wayside. Everett Cummings is 14-0. 14-0 on the post-lims. Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But I digress. Yes, to answer your question, the Fortune brothers look good. Nothing you could tell. Tyrell is the. I don't want to talk poorly here, by the way. Tyrell is the bigger prospect out of the 2 Fortune brothers over Tyree. And you could tell that Tyrell was out there trying to utilize his hands a little bit more. You could tell he was working on things and ended up going for a finish later in the fight. Joe Hernandez definitely came to fight. He looked, he took a couple of big shots. He was trying his best to throw everything he had, and it was a fun fight for the first round or so. But no, Tyrell Fortune dominated that fight.
I want to ask you, Tim, like you said, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights, and then the rest of them were the post, or the how did you refer it? The
post-lims.
Yeah, the post-lims, the post-main event, essentially.
Yep.
How do you? I don't know. How do you fix that? How do you? I don't understand what the issue is with that.
Well,
do they not start it early enough, or is it because of the TV constraints? What's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, TV is the main issue, and when they want to have the first fight kick off, right? So, they have these fights that are, I think they start at, 8 o'clock Central Time, right? So that's 6 o'clock in the West for the main card. So your prelims, you're talking about starting at 5. If you want to have, 2 of those both Fortune brothers were prelim fights, non-main card. Those were on Bellator.com. So you put those other 6 in there. That's 8 preliminary cards that you're trying to squeeze in there before 6 o'clock in the West. So I see the issue. I understand why it happens, but either don't put so many, prelims on there, or start a little bit earlier.
You would have to start off almost 2.5 to almost 3 hours to cram all those fights in there.
And their theory is, I get it. Their theory is, hey, listen, people are going to stick around for fights that they paid for, right? They may not come early, but they'll stick around. So from a live fight perspective, it makes sense. But from a fan's perspective, from a fighter's perspective, it's just frustrating. I haven't met really anyone who likes the post-limbs.
Have you talked to anybody in particular that has fought on a post-limb fight that is one way or another?
Excuse me. Yes, I've talked to a couple fighters, and they get it, but it's weird. And even when I was in California last year for Combate Americas, I think they only had 2 or 3 post limbs, but it's weird because a lot of times these main events, especially when there's hometown guys or something like that, the crowd is just so is fire, right? The crowd's all worked up or whatever, and then they go back to guys who they don't really know. So it's just a weird situation with the post limbs. Like I said, most fighters that I have spoken with aren't the biggest fans of it. But if you're gonna be on the West Coast and have 8 prelims, there's not gonna be too many ways around that if you're starting the main card at 7, 8 o'clock Central Time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But Sada Wild, he ends up winning that fight. AJ Matthews, they ended up winning. Awad's been around for a long time. What can we say about him?
It was it was a good win. He controlled JJ Ambrose, dominated the fight in pretty much every facet. 3 wins in a row for him. So 3 big wins in a row. Obviously, he had the decision over Ryan Quinn early last year. That win over Zach Freeman was very impressive. And now JJ Ambrose. I know for a fact Syed is one of those guys who wants to stay active. He's been frustrated at times with Bellator not being able to, get as many fights as he wants. He understands completely the making as much money now while he can. That's why you've seen him, float around the 155, 160, 170, 165. You've seen him float throughout the multiple divisions because he just wants to fight. He wants to stay active and he wants to make money while he can. So I'm assuming with 3 in a row now, he fought twice in 2017. He's with already getting 1 under his belt here in 18 early in the year. I would not be surprised to see him again in one of the 2 April events, either in St. Louis or Chicago. Josh, hopefully we will be at the Chicago event, and then potentially 3 more times throughout the year.
All right. Headliner Lorenz Larkin wins his fight against Fernando Gonzalez, decision. What are your thoughts?
It was a good win for Larkin. You could tell he went out there, did what he had to do. It wasn't overly impressive, but it's what he needed. Lorenz Larkin needed to go out there and get a win. Fernando Gonzalez is a very dangerous opponent. He was overweight. There were a lot of contributing factors, to that type of performance out of Lorenz Larkin. I am interested, I'm sure like many fans are interested, is when are we going to see the Lorenz Larkin that we all knew and love, in the UFC. So that's my question. I'm waiting for him to come out. Hopefully now that he has a win under his belt with Bellator, he relaxes a little bit and gets back to the old Larkin that we knew.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It'd be very interesting to see that form of fighter performing in Bellator, but right now we are kind of seeing, I don't want to say a tamer version, but it's not the Lorenz Larkin that we saw before.
Nope.
Moving on, man. We'll do UFC on Fox 27 real quick, and then we will get to the interview. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that works.
Cool, man. So UFC on Fox 27, Jacare versus Brunson 2. Headliner. Pretty decent card overall. I saw that you wrote some notes down here for me. And Mirsad Bektic, what was that? The Heart Punch of Death.
Heart Punch of Death, yes. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch these fights live. Had them on the TiVo. Had a kid's birthday party.
Oh, that's the worst.
Saturday. So, got home, put the kids to bed, and turned the card on. And, yes, Mirsad Bektic, one of the best prospects still. I mean, it's hard to call him a prospect still because he's been in the UFC for a couple years now at least. His first UFC debut was 2015. So 2014. My apologies. So it's been a while. And he is 5-1 now in the UFC. So that he basically just punched Pepe with a straight right to the left pectoral, and Pepe grabbed his heart and fell to the ground, and it was just an absolute vicious punch. It looked painful, and I'm calling it the Mirsad Bektic Heart Punch of Death.
Yeah, that did not look like it felt pretty good.
No, not at all. It looked extremely painful. Bektic, like I said, a scary dude, very explosive. He's his lone loss in the UFC was to Darren Elkins, and that's the fight, if you remember, Josh, where Elkins was getting smoked for 2 rounds. Probably was down at the very least 2018, probably realistically 2017 going into the 3rd round, and Elkins caught Bektic and ended up finishing him with like under 2 minutes left in the 3rd round back at UFC 209. So that's Bektic's lone loss. Other than that, I mean, he's submitted guys. He's knocked out numerous guys now in the UFC. So he's still a very, very exciting guy to watch.
Yeah, and losing to one Darren Elkins is no shame at all. Elkins is a very, very good fighter regardless.
Elkins is a beast. He's on a monster win streak right now. Right now himself, I actually saw that someone made a case, I don't know if it was on Reddit or where it was, that Darren Elkins deserves a title shot before Brian Ortega would.
Really?
If you look at the quality opponents that Elkins has faced, he's on a 6-fight win streak, and decision wins over Robert Whitford, Chas Skelly, Godofredo Pepe, and then he's finished Mirsad Bektic, split decision win over Dennis Bermudez, and submitted Michael Johnson. I mean, those are some tough guys for sure there. So very interesting. Obviously, Ortega has finished all of his opponents in impressive fashion since being in the UFC, including that vicious submission choke against Cub Swanson. So I just thought it was an interesting argument because not many people would think, hey, Darren Elkins, that's a title contender.
Yeah, that's I wasn't thinking about that, but now that you've said it, it kind of puts it a little bit more in perspective, I guess, in a sense. But moving on, man, Nico Price, guy that I mentioned last episode when we were talking on fighters to look for, he ended up winning his fight against George Sullivan. He looked pretty good out there, won with the submission rear naked choke. Actually, the 2nd round he looked really good. 1st round, I think I had him behind on the card. I would have to re-look at my notes, but I'm pretty sure I had him behind in round 1, but pulled out the submission victory.
Yeah, he looked good. He's ever evolving. That after that monster win against Alan Juban, knocking him out the way that he did, and then following that up with a submission loss to Vicente Luque, kind of canceled each other out, right? Kind of set him up to, going into this fight, okay, let's reassess, let's figure out what kind of fighter we're going to be here in the UFC. And I like it because, if you go back to the beginning of 2017 when he fought Alex Morano, and it ended up being a no contest. I can't remember exactly what happened there, but an illegal strike of some sort, I'm assuming. So either that or someone was on drugs. But I digress. much needed start to 2018 for one Nico Price. Like you said, very highly touted. A lot of people are excited about him and his future as well.
Justine Kish, she was the one that fought Felice Eryk, correct?
She's the one who pooped herself. Yes.
Yeah, against Felice Eryk. She ended up losing this fight. I did not see this fight. Did you watch this one?
Yes. Be happy you didn't see this fight. Because number one, and it just plain and simple, she got screwed. She got absolutely screwed. The judges hosed her. Ji Yoon Kim. I don't think Ji Yoon Kim even thought that she won this fight. It was a no-brainer that Kish was the winner. Someone scored it. I believe one of the judges scored it 30-27 for Ji Yoon Kim.
Wow.
Which is absolutely outrageous. It's impossible that she won 3 rounds. Really, it was a 29-28 win for Kish. Pretty much cut and dry. Not many people are arguing that fact. So it was kind of ironic too. A lot of people were saying because Vince Pichel, after he won his decision, he got on the bikes and he's like, "Yeah, you can't leave it in the hands of these judges because you never know what they're gonna say or what they're gonna do, and they're bound to screw someone tonight." And then the very next fight, Kish goes out there and gets screwed. So
that's pretty crazy to think of, man.
Yep.
Ronda Marcos ended up with a win, and she rebounded off of her loss to Alexa Grasso, which I think should have not been a loss to Alexa Grasso, but I digress. But she came back and she won this fight.
Yeah, Ronda Marcos is interesting, man. She's an interesting fighter. She's had some very close fights over the last, since getting into the UFC. Since coming off of the Ultimate Fighter, she's been on a defined pattern, right?
Yeah.
So loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. Pretty much nonstop, and she kept it going here. You mentioned the loss that you don't think was a loss to Grasso, and some people would argue a win that wasn't a win against Esparza. Those are her last 2 fights. So again, another person, kind of going into 2018. Where am I going to be? What am I going to do? And set herself up here to have potentially 3 or 4 fights. She hasn't had 3 fights in the same year since being on the Ultimate Fighter. That's actually the only time that she's had more than 2 fights in a year. So it'll be interesting to see if she kind of makes a push here in 2018. Be interesting to see where she goes next.
Eric Koch fought Bobby Green, and Bobby Green won this fight. Where does Koch, again, a former champion, where does he go from here?
It wasn't a former champion. What are you talking about?
Wasn't he a...
Are you talking WEC?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be right. He might have been. I know he fought for the title in WEC. I don't know if he was actually...
I thought he was.
Let's see here. Francis. No, he was never a title holder for WEC. Sorry, Josh. Sorry, I called you, bro.
It's all good.
But nevertheless, Koch is kind of he had a rough 2017. A bunch of he had some injury issues. Tried to fight a couple times in 2017 and late in 2016. Injury issues. Fighting Clay Guida last summer. And he got guided, if you would. And then this fight, Bobby Green came out there and kind of handled him as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the UFC move on. Since coming to the UFC, he hasn't. He started off good with back-to-back wins, but since then, he lost 3 of his next 4, and then in 2 of his next 3 there. So obviously, 5 out of 7 losses. This is the last 7 losses. Not good.
Oh, yeah, not good at all. All right, man, let's move on to... let's go to the guy that you were talking about, Gregor Gillespie versus Jordan Rinaldi.
Dude, Gregor Gillespie is a scary, scary individual. His college wrestling background, I believe he was an All-American. I believe it was Edinburgh. I believe. I could be wrong. I have to look that up. But I believe it was at Edinburgh. And he just goes out there and is absolutely dominant. His hands are coming along. He's getting more comfortable in the cage every time, and it looks like just an absolute world beater. So I truly expect Gregor Gillespie to go out there now and get a get a step up in competition. He's the type of guy who I think could absolutely handle it, and I think that the UFC are going to look to push him here a little bit more in 2018.
What do you see as a decent matchup for him?
That's what I'm trying to think. I wouldn't mind. I think it would lead to a very interesting fight if he fought like a Clay Guida. And I know Guida might be down at 145 now for good, but there's multiple guys who he could fight. A lot of people are wrapped up right now in the lightweight division. That's the problem, especially in the lower end to mid like top 20 range. A lot of people are kind of caught up there. I know Guida's back at 155. I wouldn't mind to see a Clay Guida. Might be a little bit of a jump for where Gregor is. He's a little bit lower than that. But no, I would like Guida quite a bit with their two wrestling styles. Those two would be forced to kind of stand up and throw bombs at each other. Either him or even a David Tamer, who's obviously been a beast as well, another top prospect. Love to see those two go at each other.
Andre Fili defeated Dennis Bermudez via split decision. A little bit of controversy. Thoughts on that?
Like that's all. I don't really know what to say to that. In all honesty, it's just a fun fight, a back and forth fight. I was not mad to see either of them win. I felt bad for whoever the loser was going to be. But it is what it is. That's the definition of, hey, you let a close fight go to the judges. You might as well just bring a frigging quarter in there and flip it and hope for the best, because that's what's going to happen. Surprised, honestly, that Bermudez had that type of fight again after the Elkins fight was that way, that he lost by a split decision, another kind of controversial split decision. So, yeah, it's sucks for Bermudez, but happy for Fili. Go out there, get a big win on a big stage as the co-main event, and move on here. And hopefully, interested to see who his next big fight's going to be against.
And the headline fight: Ronaldo Jacare Souza versus Derek Brunson.
Yeah, same old thing, man. He looked it was a close fight. They were kind of feeling each other out, and then next thing you know, Souza throws a head kick and lands a couple punches. The fight's over. I mean, you kind of watch it, and you're like, oh, okay, that's I guess that's what I expected to happen. So, yeah, not a lot there. I hate to not have a lot of analysis for you, Josh, but at the same time, I mean, kind of what people expected, kind of what happened in their first fight. Just Jacare is the real deal. Jacare is gonna, hopefully get another. He has to get a top 5 guy again. I would assume.
Yeah, you would have to think so, right?
Yeah, he'd have to get a top 5 guy. It's just who's next. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, with Luke and UL fighting for the interim. I mean, you do Jacare versus Chris Weidman. I know Weidman's coming off of some surgery though. You do Jacare against Gastelum. I mean, that'd be a fun fight. That's kind of really your only options for Jacare, and that's if Gastelum will take the fight or what. I mean, all these guys, the Gastelums, the Weidmans, they're all a win away from fighting for the title. So do you want to risk needing that one win and having it be against Jacare? I don't think Weidman or Gastelum has a choice at this point, to be honest. If Weidman's not healthy enough, what other choice does he have? He already beat Gastelum impressively. So I don't know what else they think is going to happen here. There's no other. The middleweight division is one of those that obviously still very competitive, but you have Whitaker is going to fight the winner of Rockhold and Romero. That's for sure. Jacare, Weidman, and Gastelum. That's it. There's no, then there's a big step down. Derek Brunson obviously just lost, so that, knocked him down a peg. David Branches of the world, the Uriah Halls, the Vitor Belforts, who's maybe still around. I don't know. Thiago Santos got a big fight tomorrow night. There's just not a lot. They got some young talent coming up. They still got Paulo Borrachinha Costa, the young Brazilian, coming up undefeated. they got some players potentially coming up, but a lot of older guys in this division as well.
All right, man. Overall thoughts on that card?
It was just kind of bleh. Like, it was funny. I got done watching it, and I just thought to myself, like, Josh, I probably completely miss like I did last weekend, maybe 3 to 4 cards a year at the most, at the very most. And after I got done watching, I'm like, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with, there wasn't a ton there that, I was like, man, wish I could have seen that live. That's always my thing. My wife laughs at me for. I'm like, God, I wish I would have seen that live. No, there was nothing there. Just kind of, okay. Kind of like the city of Charlotte where the event took place. Is it fun? It's okay.
Understandable, man. Understandable. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the interview. Remind everybody who it is with.
We are interviewing one Leon Edwards. He's fighting Peter Sabata at UFC Fight Night 127 at the O2 Arena in London, England, coming up here in March.
All right, let's go ahead and get him on the phone.
Go.
And we are here with the UFC, Leon Edwards. Leon, how are you?
I'm good. Just chilling.
I know you just got out of done with some training. Where were you at? We were over at the Ultimate Training Center.
Yeah, at UTC. I'd boxing, so just get some rounds of boxing in. Now I'm back home now.
All right, and let's talk about your training camp. I know that you're a big advocate of the sticking in the UK, sticking in England in particular for your training camps. Obviously, they've come a long way. How's the camp been going for the fight so far? I guess in early stages yet, right?
Yeah, just for early stages. I'm not having a 9 to 10 week camp. I start my camp this week, so early stages. But yeah, so far so good.
So for those who don't know, you're fighting Peter Sabata at UFC Fight Night 127 at the O2 Arena in London, England. So let's talk about that fight a little bit. When did you get word that you were going to be fighting Peter?
I got word I think it's in December. I got word. Peter, I thought I deserved a higher ranked opponent, but no one in the top 10 would take the fight. So Peter stepped up. Fair play to him, but. Made no mistakes. I'll go out there, I'll put him away. Been a 5-fight winning streak. And I'll be hunting for the top 10 guys.
So let's start with that. You mentioned that you thought you deserved someone who's ranked up there a little bit higher. Are you kind of frustrated with where you're at in the UFC? I mean, this is your 9th UFC fight, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm only 26 years old. I'm in this sport for a long time. So eventually, I'll get this fight. But like I said, after this fight in London, I'll go out there, I perform, I'll put Peter away, and I only want top 10 from this point forward. I've been a 5-fight winning streak then, so I think I deserve a top 10 guy after this.
So that was one of the most interesting things when I was, going over some of the tape of your fights and, doing some research on you. Is like you said, you're only 26. This is going to be your 9th fight in the UFC. I mean, kind of a fast rise here over the last, 5 years already that you've been in the UFC, or 4 years, whatever. Or you're right here, 2014 you made your debut. So you're going on year 4. How do you kind of break down your experience so far over the last few years in the UFC?
I think it's been good. I think I lost twice in the UFC, and that's it. But I think so far so good. You know what I mean? I'm putting wins together now. I'm getting more comfortable in there, and I can't say that none of these guys beat me. So I think so far so good. Everything is planning out how it's meant to plan out. So so far so good.
And what about, obviously, you've a majority of your fights here have been in the UK. You fought a couple times. You fought once in the US. That was against Kamaru Usman, and you fought once in Brazil. Do you think that that's going to be a big factor in your kind of UFC progression here, is to go and fight over in the US some more?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I love fighting over here in Europe. I've never lost in Europe, so I like competing here. But I think this year, after this fight in London, I'll be looking to go to the States, and hopefully I'll try to get one of them big names in the States, because they won't come over here to fight me. So I have to go hunting and go over there and try to get one of the big names.
before we kind of ask you about who you're thinking, in terms of big names, obviously this is going to be your second time, I believe, fighting at the O2 Arena. What's that experience like? That must be pretty cool for you.
Yeah, I love it. The fans in England are crazy, so I love the atmosphere there. Like I said, I've never lost in Europe in England, so I love fighting here. London is only a 2-hour drive for me down the road, so it's all good for me.
I'm assuming you have a lot of friends and family come out?
Yeah, I got a lot. All my friends go, all my family, apart from my mom and everyone, because she don't like watching me fight, so everyone else goes, and yes, it's good fun.
So I know you said that you didn't think that your opponent Peter Sabata was, you were going to go out there, you're going to handle him and then move on to the top 10. Do you see any part of his, are you a big film guy? Do you try to break down a lot of film?
Yeah, 100%. Make no mistakes. Peter's a tough guy. He's a veteran in the sport. But like I said, I'm on a 4-fight winning streak. I thought I'll get a higher ranked opponent, seeing I've beaten some good guys along the way. But like I said, Peter's a tough guy. I'm not looking past him. So I'll go out there, I'll perform, I'll show my skill set, then I deserve something in top 10. That's all.
So I want to talk about a welterweight in the top 10, Darren Till. I just want to know what your thoughts are on him, and has it been kind of bittersweet at all, watching him come in and kind of have this, big rise? He gets the opportunity against Cerrone when you've been, in the UFC for the last, 3 years, putting on, good performances.
Nah, he's what it is. Like I said, I've called out Cerrone. They gave Till the fight. He went in there, he did what he did. I thought I would have done the same to Cerrone as well. But fair play to him, I'm not going to hate on the man rise. So here's what it is. He's getting his shot, but I'll get there 100% this year. Like going out there, putting Sabata away, then I'm hunting for anyone in the top 10.
So obviously, with only wanting guys in the top 10 after you get the win over Sabata, listen, you fought twice over the last two times in each of the past 2 years. Are you looking to be more active in 2018, have more fights than that, or do you like having just the 2 fights a year?
Nah, I think this year I need to be more active. Like I said, I'm young, so it's getting there and get it while I'm injury free. So this year I'll be looking for 3 to 4 fights for this year. Then I'll see where that takes me. But yeah, I definitely want to be busy this year.
What are your thoughts on the welterweight division as a whole? Guys in the top 10 like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's been there for a while, the Jorge Masvidal's of the world. You got the champ and Tyron Woodley, and then guys obviously making a big push here. Colby Covington is talking a lot of trash and making a name for himself. What are your just thoughts of the top 10 as a whole?
I think top 10 division is wide open. It's why there's no real stands out to me that I think, wow, this guy, blah blah blah. I think they all fight the same. I think there's nobody that I looked in the top 10 and think, I can't beat these guys. So it's just getting the fight and going out there and proving it. But for me, I think the division is wide open.
You mentioned a couple times your age, obviously only 26. Do you feel like you're in the prime of your career right now, or do you feel like you're just approaching that time?
Nah, I think you're in your prime to about 28,
yep.
28 to 32. So I'm already chipping away here. Well, I'm not in prime for now, so I'm just playing here and chipping away and keep beating these guys. I'm nowhere near my prime.
Your last loss was against one Kamaru Usman. He fights here coming up this weekend in St. Louis. Is that a fight that you would like back?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Like I said, I'm only looking for top 10 though. So if it gets in top 10 after this fight, then I'll be hunting him down as well. So whoever that's in the top 10, if he gets it after beating is it fine? What's it Mill? Who's it fine?
Yeah, Amik Mill.
Meat Mill, exactly. So if he beats the Meat Mill and that ranks him in the top 10, then I'll be hunting for him as well. But that's not really the fight I'm pushing for at the moment, as he's not in the top 10. So yeah, his time will come though. After you beat Peter Sabata at Fight Night 127, is that the time where you just get on the mic and say you want anyone in the top 10, or are you going to have someone specifically that you're trying to call out? I think I'll say anyone in the top 10. I've not really looked at a really specific person to pick a name, but I think anyone top 10, I'm matched up well against them. So whoever they give me, that's all that matters. My aim is to be this year is to get into the top 10, crack the top 5 this year, then crack on my way to the title next year.
Well, we definitely appreciate the time. Again, Leon Rocky Edwards, he's fighting at UFC Fight Night 127 against Peter Sabata at the O2 Arena in London, England. Leon, before we let you go, I want to just ask you, what do you like to do in your free time? Obviously, only 26, right? You're in this, very violent sport. Takes up a lot of your time, constantly busy. What do you do to relax? How do you calm down and kind of reset your mind?
For me, I got a little son. He's 4 years old, so I'll spend time with him. I also got a new dog, like a month ago. So I play with my dog and I spend time with my son and my family, and I just chill, away from the gym. I'm just as a family man, to be fair. So just chill with my family. Raise my son, play with my little dog, and that's me.
What does your son think about you fighting?
He's 4 years old at the moment, so he watches me fight on TV and he loves it. You know what I mean? He always asks me, "Are you the strongest in the world?" I said, "Yeah." You know what I mean? So he loves it. I take him to pads at home, and he likes the fighting thing. So yeah, it's all good.
Is that something that you would, if he comes down the road, and says, "Yeah, Dad, I want to fight," is that something that you'd be okay with?
If he's good at it, then yeah. But I won't blow the smoke up his ass and tell him he's good if he's not good. And I like to fight and secure his future, so he doesn't need to fight. You know what I mean? So, but if he does want to do it, I don't see the problem with it. MMA has taught me a lot growing up, so I don't see the problem with him competing.
Honesty is definitely the best policy, so your kid doesn't get beat up in terms of fighting.
Exactly. Them parents that lie to the kids and you're the best in the world, blah blah blah, and the kid is shit. I don't see the point in it. So I'll be honest with him 100%. If he's good, he's good. If he's not, that's not for him. So that's all.
Leon, when you're not cutting weight or in camp trying to make sure that you're at your best, what's your best cheat food?
Pizza. I love pizza. I like eating pizza, so that's my cheat. If I had to cheat, that's pizza. That's my food. Domino's.
Domino's pizza. Okay, and do you have a
Domino's pizza?
Do you have a song or a CD or even a TV show, something that you watch or listen to that you would maybe be a little bit embarrassing if people knew a professional fighter was listening to that type of music or watching that type of show?
I can't think. I don't know.
No? Okay.
I can't think.
All right, fair.
I can't think.
In that case, what's your favorite show then?
Well, I like watching series. I was watching Power. Then I watching Game of Thrones. There's a new one on Netflix called Snowfall. I've been watching that. That's about it, really. That's like them kind of series.
Okay, all right, makes sense. Well, again, Leon Rocky Edwards. Leon, the last question I have for you before I let you go, and we really appreciate the time. How does the fight end at Fight Night 127?
I think Peter going to come out, try to push the grappling. I can see him catching him. I'm putting him away in the either late second or early third, but I can see me stopping him.
Ready to put himself even more so on the map and get into the top 10 here in 2018. Yeah. Leon Rocky Edwards. Leon, we really appreciate the time. Before we let you go, are there any sponsors, teammates, coaches, friends, family that you want to thank?
I also want to thank my gym, UTC in Birmingham, all my sponsors, Lion Nutrition, Reflex Protein, and yeah, that's about it.
Leon,
all my training partners. That's it.
Thank you so much for the time, Leon. Best of luck to you with the fight. We'll be talking to you later on this year.
Yeah, good. All good. Thank you.
Take care.
And that was Leon Edwards. Leon, we really appreciate the time. Best of luck to you with your upcoming fight against Peter Sabata. Again, at UFC Fight Night 127 at the O2 Arena in London, England, coming up in March. So thanks again, Leon, for the time. Really
Tim,
appreciate it.
With all that being said, with Leon and Peter Sabata coming up, how do you see that fight going?
Honestly, I kind of agree with what Leon had to say. I think that he's going to bring a little too much to the table. Sabato's a tough dude. I don't expect him to back down, but somewhat stylistically, like you remember when Connor, before he was champion or anything, when he fought Dennis Seaver, and it was just like, okay, you knew Seaver was dangerous, you knew he had some impressive wins, but at the end of the day, you just knew what Connor brought was going to be too much for him. Kind of think it's going to be very similar in this fight, just with Leon's natural talent, what he brings to the table. I think it's just going to be a little bit too much, and he's going to be able to overwhelm Peter Sabata.
All right, man. Fair enough. Let's go ahead and move on to the last card we're going to talk about, and that is the card on in Brazil, and it's UFC Fight Night 125. Again, headlined by Lyoto Machida and Eryk Anders. And let's talk about some of the fights on the card. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's talk with today, because weigh-ins were today.
Yeah.
And they were not kind to anybody.
Two people missed weight, correct?
Yeah, 3 people to be exact. It was messed up. Typical Brazilian card fashion. There was issue with the hotel, not being able to get like different types of food, not being able to get hot water, tons of different issues. Just a bad look overall for everyone involved. Michel Prazeres, who's fighting Desmond Green, he missed weight by, I believe, a total of 5 pounds, and then why am I blanking right now? Pedro Munoz, who is fighting John Dodson. Pedro Munoz missed weight as well by about 4 pounds, and that led to then Dodson saying that he didn't want to take the fight, so he doesn't take the fight, and the UFC doesn't pay him. So that's a whole big ordeal that's going on as well. And then the main event, Lyoto Machida and your boy. I'm still convinced that I'm the reason that he came up with that nickname, Joshua. But Eryk Anders, big step for him. Big opportunity, undefeated, and he missed weight by like 2.5 pounds. And then it was weird. They announced that he missed weight. Everything ends, and then about 5-10 minutes afterwards, they come out and say, well, because it's the main event and because of hotel issues and not having hot water, he gets an hour to cut the extra weight. So 52 minutes later, he comes back out. Boom. He makes weight at 186 pounds. So while I am thrilled for Eryk Anders, very happy, it's going to be a legitimate fight, and, no harm, no foul. He gets to keep all of his money. I think this whole situation is a fucking joke.
Well, do you think it's an issue with the scales? Do you think it's an issue with them making weight in general, or the hotels and everything? Because when Anders came back out to reweigh, they brought out the towel, but he was in boxers still.
Yeah, no, it's not on the hotel scale. It's not. What it's on is it's on the UFC. How are you the greatest organization in the world? There's so many different levels to this, Josh, but how are you the greatest organization in the world, and you don't make sure that for fight night, or for your fighters, especially in a different country that aren't necessarily where you have these issues kind of regularly, especially this isn't your first rodeo. You've experienced this before. How are you not positive that you're in a 5-star hotel, that you're going to have hot water, that you're going to give your fighters the best opportunity possible to make weight? And on top of that, how are you not educating your fighters? Now, a lot of this does go on to the fighter, goes on to their coaches, goes on to the management, but at the end of the day, the UFC has to protect their own product as well, right? This is where it just doesn't make sense to me. You have Eryk Anders, stud, top prospect. You're giving him what he wants, bringing him to hostile territory in Brazil, fighting a legend, Lyoto Machida. You're kind of trying to milk Machida for all that he has left, right, to build Anders up. How are you not going to make sure that he's prepared? that he has, that he's educated, that he knows what Brazil's going to have and not have. Again, this isn't the first time we've heard this. We've heard fighters talk about how it's hard getting the food's so different, and it's hard getting anything. It's hard getting different sweatsuits, things that are common here. Gatorade, normal things for rehydrating afterwards. This isn't the first time we've heard about these issues. Stop going to all these different countries in South America if you can't ensure that your fighters are going to be properly compensated and competently prepared for the fights. It's just not fair to the fighters, and ultimately this could have been not fair for the fans. What if Anders misses weight and then Machida won't take the fight? Then you're looking at Shevchenko versus Priscilla Couture as the main event. Yikes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Luckily, it was agreed upon with the commission and Lyoto Machida that gave the go-ahead for Anders to take that hour to cut the weight.
Yeah. I mean, but again, this doesn't make sense. The UFC is just setting themselves up to look foolish when someone finally takes them to court. Things like this are things that's good. This is literally the UFC just saying, hey, we don't want to have egg on our face here. We already have an issue with the co-main event. We're going to do what we have to do here to make sure that Anders makes weight. That's all it was. That's it.
So what's the I did not see that. I was looking on the card up and down. I'm like, where's Dodson? Where's Dodson? Now that you said that. So what's the word on Dodson and the UFC right now?
Well, Dodson's pissed because he's not getting paid. But, all right, again, lots of layers to this. But at the end of the day, and I know one Ariel Helwani is on the same page as me for a change, because normally he's not. You would hope that the UFC would say, hey, you know what? You made your weight. He didn't. This doesn't have anything to do with you. We understand that, a loss in your career could look very poorly upon you, right? With how competitive these things are, it's going to look bad on you to have a loss here. You can't risk it. We get it. That's fine. Not on you. That guy's not getting paid. You're still going to make your show money. That's it. Hit your show money. That's all you have to do. Not a win. Not your full purse. Nothing. Your show money. Do that, and everyone's happy. UFC says no. It comes back to the fighters and their management. You can't expect that the UFC or any of these organizations are going to do the right thing. And there should be a learning curve for all fighters everywhere. Maybe the UFC won't do it regardless, right? Maybe anytime it's maybe they don't have it like that in contract form for anybody. But if it's me and it's my career, I 100% am pushing over, or at least some type of insurance clause, right? Something that Dodson's been in for a while here. Not that the UFC can't afford it, but he's probably got at least $50,000 to show, something like that. Maybe something so it's $35,000, right, or $25,000, something in the contract to protect yourself against situations like this from happening. You flew down there, your team flew down there, you went through a whole camp, you made weight, you have all that to pay for, and now he's SOL. Would it be nice for the UFC to pay him? Sure, but it's not their problem, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I agree with you. And you look at it, and I believe he was talking to MMAweekly.com, and he said he came in 5 pounds overweight. Dodson said, and originally they told him that he was 3 pounds over, so he gave him the benefit of the doubt. Said he's 139. They said he's more like 140 point something. So technically he's around the ballpark, around 141. He's not a bantamweight now. He's a featherweight. And he made all the sacrifices to make the weight, and the other guy chose not to. So, in my opinion, I think he does deserve his show money. And actually now I'm looking at an update on that whole situation. He received now, quote-unquote, a portion of his show money. The terminology on it is not the full amount, but just a portion.
And that's fine. That's all good and well. But at the end of the day, that's you think about it as business outside of the you think about it even in the business world, right? In what I do, or outside of fighting, or what you do, whatever. if you go and if I send someone a contract and say, hey, listen, this is what we're providing, this is what we're doing, we're going to do it in this amount of days, and here's your quote. All right, they sign it, that's whatever. And then something happens where I get pushed back 1 day, 2 days, right? And it's costing me more money. If I go back to that person and say, hey, well, can you pay me more? They're going to laugh in my face. Or can you make sure I'm getting paid for this? They're not going to do it. It just doesn't work that way. Make sure to cover your ass. CYA. That's business 101, and that's what MMA fighters need to learn to start doing.
Agreed, man. Agreed. And it's a shame because I like John Dodson, and it'd be awesome to see him on this card. But hopefully another time. Hopefully they rebook it soon, and hopefully it's not in Brazil because I want to see fighters make weight. So.
Yeah, right.
Moving on, man. What fights here are you really looking forward to on the UFC Fight Night 125?
Well, I mean, the main event, obviously, like I said, I can't even pretend to be biased. I'm a big-time Eryk Anders supporter. One of the guys who, you kind of you get to know, and, when you're interviewing them before they're in any of the big shows, it's cool to see them kind of progress throughout. So, obviously, very excited about that. But my fight of the night, I think it is an absolute no-brainer. Joshua, Thiago Santos against Anthony Smith. It is the one that is kicking off the main event portion of the card, and I do not see how this isn't just an absolute just slugfest, that they don't just beat the living daylights out of each other. They're just both very, very aggressive. Very, let's see here. What are my notes on this fight that I have here? The power and aggression with both these guys, it just makes it must-watch TV. My assumption will be fight of the night. No way. Whatever bet you want to make, Joshua, I would make it. No way that this goes the distance. I would guarantee that. Both of them impressive in their stand-up. Both of them can take shots. Neither of them are ever out any fight. Both on 3-fight win streaks, and Santos 3 wins in a row, all 3 by knockout or TKO. And guess what, Josh, your boy Anthony Smith, he is also on a monster win streak of 3 fights. Guess what? Also by knockout or TKO. This is my most exciting fight of the weekend. I haven't been this excited for a fight in a long time.
Man, I agree with you. I think it's going to be an excellent fight again. You did say Anders was on the show before. We interviewed him, and twice. Twice. And it's awesome to see fighters kind of quote unquote grow before your eyes. You get to see him when they're on the lower cards. When he was on, I don't want to say lower, but when he was on LFA, and then we got to see him go up from there to the UFC. It's just interesting to see where he goes from where he was to where he's at now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you wonder then after that, we were talking about the different type of, the middleweight talent, right? And how they need some young blood on the way up. Eryk Anders, another one of those guys. We mentioned Borrachinha. It's interesting to see the kind of next step there. This fight would kind of propel Anders up into that top 20 area, and then then he'd be looking at some different guys.
Anything else on this card, or you want to move on to some of the news stories that are going on?
We can move on to the news stories. That's all I care to talk about right now.
All right, man. I'm going to first start off with one of the big ones that I saw yesterday, and that was one John Jones training in his garage, trying to stay active while he is still got his ban for MMA. What are your thoughts and his UFC career in limbo? What are your thoughts on John Jones posting a video? What was it, on Twitter, I believe it was? What are your thoughts on him posting the video to everybody to see?
Don't care. Don't care at all. I did not know. I know John Jones is a lot of things. I did not know he was a troll. This is him trying to keep himself relevant. This is him trying to convince himself that he's not going to get a long-term suspension. Honestly, after hearing the news, I know we'll talk about it a little bit later here, but hearing the news about Anderson Silva potentially being suspended for 8 years, he has to be really, really nervous with his history. He has to be extremely nervous.
Well, that brings me to my next point. Anderson Silva, potential ban for 8 years. They did come out and say that he has still not taken anything, no supplements, blah, 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 went on and on and on about it. But his trainer and coach did come out and say that if they decide to suspend Anderson Silva anything more than 2 years, he will retire from the sport.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to, and he should be suspended for more than 2 years. I don't understand how you're a multiple offender like this. You have the things in his system that he did, and you don't get more than 2 years. It just wouldn't make any sense for me, and they have to, especially with a big name fighter like Anderson Silva, this is the time to kind of lay down the law a little bit. The Anderson Silvas, the John Jones, you took it easy on him the first time, now multiple time offenders. Now is the time to set a precedent.
We have Luke Rockhold. He is going to have AKA the team, obviously, in his corner, and they will be appearing on The Ultimate Fighter with him.
Well, you had it a little bit backwards. He's going to end up showing up on with DC.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
On The Ultimate Fighter. No, that's fine. Yeah, no, obviously this is big news because Rockhold is training down in Florida. He has, I believe this is his second fight. And, he was in the same camp, same room as Volkan Ozdemir leading up to the Daniel Cormier fight. And then post-fight, Cormier mentioned everyone, who's going to be champion from AKA. And he doesn't mention Rockhold. So many people were speculating, is this is there a feud there? Is there an issue? Is there this? Is there that? And now this kind of just puts it all to rest. Cormier is across numerous platforms, so is Rockhold saying, listen, they're fine. There's no issues there whatsoever. Rockhold had some personal stuff going on, and that's why he had to move to Florida. And then to see here, I mean, he has the big names, the big guns from AKA, coming and being in his corner in the biggest fight of his career right now. So
we have Anthony Pettis coming up, and he is fighting one Michael Chiesa set for UFC 223.
Yep, taking place in Brooklyn, I believe. I love the fight. Absolutely love it. Chiesa doesn't get the respect he deserves, I don't believe, as a fighter. And Pettis, I hate to say this, I believe at times is a little bit overrated. I'm a big Anthony Pettis fan, obviously a former champion. But since losing his belt to RDA, he hasn't ever rebounded. So this fight is the perfect opportunity for both guys. Pettis rebound, get back to the top condition he's been in, and Chiesa to make a big splash against the big name.
I saw here on the notes you sent me Alexander Gustafsson criticizing DC, and Glover gets it. I'm not too sure exactly what that is. I have not seen anything about that.
So Alexander Gustafsson came out and essentially bashed DC for taking the fight against Stipe at heavyweight. And DC kind of responded saying, mocking Gustafsson for some of his past fights and how he lost, this, that, and the other. And Gustafsson, came back out again and was just saying how he's ruining the division. And Gustafsson could have been ready; they could have fought. And DC basically told him, "Hey, man, too little, too late. This is somewhere. It's already done. It's signed up for. You should have been talking this trash when the opportunity to face me was there while I was still in the light heavyweight division." So he kind of shuts him in. Glover Teixeira was just like, no, I totally get it. I would have done the same thing. So very interesting just to see. You knew these reactions were going to happen. But, I really do hope that Gustafsson versus DC 2 happens because that was a great fight.
Man, and the last thing that I have is that Floyd Mayweather video. He's got video 1 and video 2 now.
Just bad, just all around bad. That's all I can say. I don't have anything else. There is no way. I remember a time, Josh, when you said on our show, there's no way that Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather would ever box each other, right?
Yep.
And I said, we all we laughed, whatever. I'm saying there is no way Floyd Mayweather ever steps into an MMA octagon. It just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make he doesn't need the money, and he's too full of himself to lose. he's a guaranteed loss. Now, I did see, I can't remember what show saw it. Someone said that if Floyd Mayweather steps into the octagon, he should fight CM Punk. That was the perfect. And I was like, that would be genius. If the UFC could find a way to pull that off, that would be a $1 billion fight right there. And Floyd has a shot in that one.
That's very true, yeah.
But no, other than that, this whole, you saw Conor coming back, and he was interviewed. He said he would respect him if he did it. There's no way. This is Floyd just toying with him. Conor did say, in the latest Conor news, that he's in negotiations for his next fight. He said now Floyd, Tony Ferguson, Habib, Nate Diaz, they're all on the table. So no one still has any idea what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't even know what to think of that division anymore. With Conor, I don't even, who knows anymore, man. Well,
I brought up I thought I was listening to, I believe it was on the MMA Hour this past week after our discussion last week about why the UFC is doing this with the titles, right? Eddie Alvarez was on, and he made a good point, which I thought you would like real quick. He says that the UFC, it's simple why they're not stripping Conor, because this is the fourth time that they've tried to make Habib versus Tony Ferguson, right? So they're going to book this fight now, but why strip Conor? Because if this fight falls through again, then they have no lightweight champion.
That is very true.
And they don't want to have that. So that actually, from that aspect, all right, Eddie Alvarez, I'll buy that. I'm picking up with now.
So what you're saying is pretty much wait until that the fight is done, or the fight is actually ready, willing to go after weigh-ins, and then you would almost say, here we go, the Conor strip.
Once everyone's weighed in, or once everyone is, I don't even know if weighed in, because we've seen people pull out the next morning. I guess once they get to the arena, then they'll announce on the broadcast that night, yes, Conor McGregor's been stripped, and then those guys will go out there and fight.
The whole time leading up, it is the interim title.
No,
It's not.
I
know. And then as they step into the cage door locks, and they're like, this is for the title, and Conor is now stripped.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. Crazier things have happened.
This is getting better and better. It's like a true crime story.
It is. It's something.
Anything else, man?
That's all I got for right now, Josh. I need to do a little bit of preparation and get some sleep before our big night tomorrow. We'll try to be on Facebook Live on MMAnews.com, maybe some Twitter. We'll be all over the place tomorrow. So.
All right, man. For Tim and myself, we are the MMA News Podcast, powered by Pony Cake Sports. You guys can follow us on Twitter at Pony Cake Sports, at Fight Talk Tim. You guys can go to MMAnews.com, check out all of Tim's interviews, his articles, all that good stuff. Go on there, comment on it, share it, do everything you got to do there, and also go to our website, ponycakesports.com, share all of our stuff, all that good stuff. And for Tim and myself, we'll see you next time.